Hi everyone and welcome to the Surrey Cultural Lives Podcast. I'm your host Beth Roberts and today I'm very excited to be joined by our amazing winner of the Surrey Cultural Lives competition, Diana Laffin, who will be telling us a little bit about groundbreaking riflewoman Marjorie Elaine Foster. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me today, Diana. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's a real pleasure.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine, trust me. Before we talk about Marjorie, would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yes, I'm a retired college history teacher. I specialised in A-level particularly, and I wrote a couple of books, an A-level text and a guide for history teachers. Now I'm retired, I'm really enjoying doing my own history research and sharing it in articles and talks to local groups.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. It's great that you're still doing all those things after retirement and that you're still so interested in it. For those who may not have read your engrossing entry on Marjorie, would you be able to introduce her?
Yes, she's an extraordinary woman with quite a long life. She was born in 1893 in London, quite a well-to-do family. They moved to Frimley, or Camberley, when she was about 7 years old. She had an older brother, Lancelot, and they had a very pleasant middle-class life in Frimley. But at the age of 7, I think, her father took her to the local shooting club and she developed a real passion for shooting. And that was the main dominant force of her life, but actually she did so many other things as well. She was at different times a sculptor, a driving instructor, a motor vehicle repair woman, an officer for the camps after the Second World War, displacement camps. So, she was a woman who led a very full life, and I didn't add on, she ran a poultry business with her partner as well. So, amazing, really.
Well, what an incredible woman. Like, such a versatile and brilliant life. And also, it's so interesting seeing the Olympics on at the moment with women doing rifle shooting and thinking about her as this really, really important, foremother to them. So you note in your entry on the Surrey Cultural Lives map that Marjorie retained the same calm focus on women's rights as she did when aiming her rifle, which is just beautiful. Would you classify her as an early feminist?
Well, sort of, yes. I mean, she was prepared to flout the conventions. I mean, she was a lesbian. She dressed in masculine dress, a flannel suit and a beret. She had a cigarette out the side of her mouth. So she was very daring in living the life she wanted to as a woman. She also defied the odds with shooting. They tried to close it after the First World War. They stopped anyone who wasn't in the services from being able to shoot, thinking that would exclude women. But of course, Marjorie joined the auxiliary services and continued with being a transport person for the Red Cross. So she was still in the services, so she managed to circumvent the rules. She did get quite a lot of opposition for that. And perhaps, she's known for winning the King's Prize in 1930, which was a very prestigious achievement. But perhaps she should be also remembered in 1939 for determinedly shooting again when she faced a lot of opposition. She actually won the Territorial Army Prize for shooting, but they refused to give it to her because they said she was ineligible. I think in the end she proved them all wrong because she lost a finger actually in the Second World War driving an ambulance in Portsmouth during a raid. Fortunately, it wasn't her trigger finger. So.
Oh, bless her. I can imagine that if she'd be gutted if it was the trigger finger. But what an incredible woman who paved the way for women to challenge conventions.
And in the Second World War, she really tried hard to get women better pay and conditions for their services and also for women to be allowed to be combatants. She trained women in what was called the Amazon League, which was a kind of unofficial women's defence force. But the irony was this woman was training men to shoot for home defence, but she was only allowed to have a stick, not a rifle, despite having been called the champion shot of the Empire in 1930.
Oh, it's just typical, isn't it? So you briefly mentioned the love of Marjorie's life, Blanche Babcock. Do you know how much Blanche's earlier death affected Marjorie?
It's difficult to know because of several things. One is the evidence. She didn't leave behind diaries, letters, personal things that might tell us. And she was a woman of that generation who were stiff upper lip, I think. She didn't display emotion in public. Perhaps that's why she was such a good shot. She was able to have that calm focus. After Blanche died, she moved house out of the chicken farm and lived as a single woman in a bungalow near Bisley. So we can only conjecture. They were together a very long time and shared, the poultry business and the shooting together all those years. You imagine it must have been a terrible loss for her, but we can't say for sure.
Yeah, of course, that sort of silent generation, as they're known, it makes a lot of sense that she was stum about her personal life. Thank you. And then finally, I just wondered if you'd be able to talk a little bit about your research process. Obviously, you're a retired history teacher and someone who's still interested in history, but I wondered how you found out about Marjorie and what inspired you to want to learn more.
Well, I love looking at local history. I usually start with a kind of broader sweep. I sort of look at a period, and this time I was looking at women in Surrey in the 1920s. So I read some sort of general history books, and then Surrey is so lucky in having very good local history sections in the library at Guildford, and of course Guildford's also got the wonderful Guildford Institute, which has lots of local resources. So I started going into them, and then finally a little bit of primary source research at the Surrey History Centre. So it's kind of ever decreasing circles, really, broad at the beginning and then going into the very nitty-gritty.
Oh, that's great to hear. We have some really wonderful connections with the Surrey History Centre and the Guildford Institute, who we've run some great events with, and they are just fantastic. So yeah, I second your respect of them there, and I would recommend any listeners who do want to look into Surrey's history to go to both, definitely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this, Diana. I really appreciate it, and it's been such a fantastic episode where the listeners, I'm sure, will have learnt a lot, but I personally have learnt a lot about one of Surrey's unsung heroes, who I think definitely deserves a lot more praise and a lot more people knowing her name. Thank you to all our listeners for tuning in and taking the time to listen to our wonderful guests talk about some of Surrey's most influential cultural icons. This is our final episode for now, but if you'd like to hear more, please do leave us a comment or email us at sllresearch@surrey.ac.uk. We'd love to know who you would like us to chat to. Thank you for listening.